When considering a list of baseball's most accomplished legendary pitchers, one must begin with some of the game's earliest pioneers. Between 1890 and 1930, baseball was dominated by four men. The first of these pitching greats was a man whose record for career victories stands to this day. Denton True Young was nicknamed the Cyclone. This name was shortened to the more familiar Cy Young. Young's mastery on the mound was so complete that the ultimate award bestowed on pitchers bears his name. Beginning his career with Cleveland in 1890, Young went on to win 20 or more games in 14 straight years. He won 30 or more games in a season 5 times, pitched 3 no-hitters, and threw 77 shutouts. Young ended his remarkable career in 1911 and amassed 511 victories, more than any man in baseball history. Walter Johnson pitched for the Washington Senators from 1907 to 1927. He was called the Big Train due to his blinding fastball. He ranked second in career victories with 416. Johnson is thought by many to be the hardest throwing pitcher of all time. His 3,508 total strikeouts allowed him to reign as baseball's strikeout king for 56 years, and his 110 lifetime shutouts still stands on top of the list. Walter Johnson managed to achieve all these milestones despite playing for one of the worst teams in baseball. Number 3 on the career victory list is Christy Matthewson of the New York Giants. Matthewson was the ace of the Giants staff from 1900 to 1916. During that span, Matthewson won 20 or more games 13 times and won 30 or more games 4 times, and held an impressive lifetime record of 373 wins and only 187 losses. He was more or less a finesse pitcher who relied upon pinpoint accuracy and a wicked fadeaway curve, which helped him throw a total of 80 shutouts. Tied for third in career victories with Matthewson is Grover Cleveland Alexander, who pitched in the National League with Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Chicago between 1911 and 1930. Alexander won 28 games as a Philadelphia rookie and eventually went on to win 20 or more games in a season 8 times, in addition to leading the league in strikeouts 6 times. His 2 victories in the 1926 World Series propelled St. Louis to victory over the Yankees. Alexander was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1938. During the Dust Bowl days of the 1930s, word of a hard-throwing Iowa farm boy named Bob Feller spread through the baseball world. While pitching American Legion ball, Feller attracted the attention of numerous pro scouts with his blazing fastball. The young pitcher was ultimately signed to a contract by the Cleveland Indians. He made the jump from the American Legion directly to the major leagues in 1936. The 17-year-old rookie's debut appearance was a relief appearance against the St. Louis Cardinals in an exhibition game. The kid's murderous fastball allowed him to strike out 8 of the 9 men he faced. A bit of wildness and inexperience kept Bob out of the starting rotation until late in the season. Feller got his first start against the St. Louis Browns, and the result was a 4-hit shutout and 15 strikeouts. Three weeks later, he faced the Philadelphia A's and struck out 17 batters, thereby shattering Rube Waddell's American League record and tying Dizzy Dean's Major League record for strikeouts in a game. At age 17, Bob Feller was a Major League sensation. In 1937, Feller found himself struggling with his control and managed to win only 9 games. In 1938, Bob seemed to turn the corner by winning 17 games and leading the league in strikeouts. He was also named to the All-Star team. On the final day of the 38th season, Feller's fastball carried him into the record books once more. Pitching against Detroit, he faced Hank Greenberg, who was 2 home runs away from tying Babe Ruth's record of 60 in a season. Feller not only denied Greenberg, but he also set a new Major League record with 18 strikeouts in the game. The 19-year-old pitcher was now baseball's new strikeout king. In 1939, Bob Feller led the American League with 24 wins and 246 strikeouts. In the All-Star game, he was called on in relief.
What a pressure spot for the 20-year-old Iowa farm boy. Rapid Robert comes in with the bases loaded, 1 out. He'll be facing Pittsburgh's Archie Vaughan. Bob Feller winds in the pitch. Vaughan, a ground ball to second. Gordon for 1 to throw in the relay. Double play. The American League is out of the inning, still leading 3-1 with just 1 pitch. Bob Feller has saved the day.
On opening day 1940, Feller pitched a no-hitter, then went on to win 27 games. The following year, Rapid Robert won 25 games. After losing 4 prime years to World War II, he appeared stronger than ever in 1946. On April 30th, he faced the Yankees and threw the second no-hitter of his career and the first ever in Yankee Stadium. Following a 20-win season in 1947, Feller and the Indians defeated the Boston Braves in the 1948 World Series. In the years that followed the World Series win, Feller's fastball lost some velocity, and he adjusted his pitching style. In 1951, he enjoyed the last great season of his career with 22 wins and his 3rd no-hitter. He retired following the 1956 season with a total of 266 wins and 2,581 strikeouts. In 1962, Bob Feller was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. In 1946, the Boston Braves brought up a 25-year-old southpaw named Warren Spahn. The lefty won 21 games in his second year, and soon he and teammate Johnny Sain formed one of the best pitching duos in the game. Boston fans coined the phrase Spahn and Sain and then pray for rain. Together, Spahn and Sain won 39 games as Boston won the National League pennant in 1948. While the Braves lost in the 1948 World Series to Cleveland, Warren Spahn went on to win 20 games for 3 straight seasons. In 1953, Spahn and the Braves moved to Milwaukee. In his new surroundings, the crafty left-hander found great success as he won 23 games and instantly became a favorite among the hungry baseball fans of Milwaukee. Despite Spahn's individual performance, the Braves did not enter postseason play until 1957. That year, Warren won 21 games and led Milwaukee to a pennant at a World Series showdown with the venerable New York Yankees. After losing a close decision in the opening game, Spahn came back to beat the Yankees in the 4th game of the series. Milwaukee went on to win the World Series in 7 games. Over the following 3 seasons, Spahn reeled off 64 wins and threw his first no-hitter at the age of 39. Then, in 1961, the 41-year-old Marble faced the Chicago Cubs in search of win number 300. Displaying the usual guile and grit, Spahn shut down Chicago by a score of 2-1. He also threw the second no-hitter of his career that season. By the time of his retirement in 1965, Spahn had won 20 or more games in a season 13 times. And with 363 lifetime wins, he had won more games than any left-handed pitcher in history. Throughout their dominance of the American League in the 50s and 60s, the New York Yankees were served by a left-handed ace of their own, Whitey Ford. During his career, Ford compiled the third highest winning percentage of all time. His greatest moments came about in the 11 World Series of his era. As a rookie in 1950, he shut down the Philadelphia Phillies in the 4th game of the series, and despite leaving the game in the 9th inning, he became the youngest pitcher ever to win a World Series game. The Yankees swept the series in 4 games. After missing all of 1951 and 52 to military service, Ford came back to win 18 games in 1953. The Yankees defeated their rivals from Brooklyn in the World Series. The two teams met once again in the 1955 World Series, and despite Ford's 2 wins, the Yankees were down by the bums in 7 games. In the 1960 World Series, Ford began a streak that would place his name in the record books once more. In that series, he beat the Pittsburgh Pirates 2 times without giving up a run. The Yankees lost the series nonetheless. The next year, Whitey and company faced the Cincinnati Reds, and in Game 1, Whitey allowed 2 hits and no runs. Then in Game 4, he held the Reds scoreless through 5 innings to surpass a series record for consecutive scoreless innings with 32. The Yankees went on to a 5-game series win, while Whitey Ford laid claim to a record that had been held by none other than Babe Ruth. Ford added another series record to his collection by winning the 10th series game of his career in 1962. The World Series success for Ford and the Yankees ended that year. The Los Angeles Dodgers and the St. Louis Cardinals defeated them in 1963 and 64. Whitey Ford retired in 1967 with 236 wins and World Series records for most wins, games played, and shutouts. He entered the Hall of Fame in 1974. A member of the Dodgers from their days in Brooklyn through the 60s, Don Drysdale established himself as one of the game's most fierce, even feared pitchers. He was a power pitcher who went on to become the Dodgers' all-time leader in wins, strikeouts, and innings pitched. In 1959, Drysdale won 17 games and was voted the All-Star Game MVP. The Dodgers won the National League pennant and played the Chicago White Sox in the World Series. With Drysdale getting a win in Game 3, the Dodgers took a 2-1 lead and went on to win it all in 6 games. Another aspect of Don Drysdale's game was his willingness to back hitters off the plate with high and tight pitches. Drysdale felt that he was entitled to the inside part of the plate and would not hesitate to put down those who entered his territory. The year 1962 was a breakthrough for Drysdale. That season, he won 25 games and led the league in strikeouts. Drysdale's impressive performance earned him the National League Cy Young Award. With Drysdale winning 19 games in 1963, the Dodgers won the pennant and took on their old rivals from New York, the Yankees, in the 1963 World Series. With the Dodgers leading 2-0, Don Drysdale hammered more nails into the Yankee coffin in Game 3 with a 1-0 victory. The Dodgers won Game 4 to complete a sweep of the mighty Yankees. While Don Drysdale continued to enjoy great success in 1964 with 18 wins, the Dodgers as a team could only manage a 6th place finish. The following season, Drysdale was dominant with 23 wins and 20 complete games. The Dodgers came back to the World Series and met the Minnesota Twins. Down 2 games in the series, Drysdale saved the Dodgers with a win in Game 3. The Dodgers came all the way back to win the series in 7 games. Although the Dodgers lost to the Baltimore Orioles in the 1966 World Series, Drysdale performed valiantly in the final game by allowing just 4 hits and 1 run in defeat. Then, in 1968, the Big D achieved a remarkable record by putting together an amazing string of 58 2/3 innings of shutout pitching. He broke Walter Johnson's major league record for scoreless innings that had first been set in 1913. When he finally retired from the game in 1969, Don Drysdale left behind a career mark of 209 victories and 2,486 strikeouts. In 1984, Drysdale was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame and utilized the occasion to thank those who made the trip worthwhile.
Ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Hall of Fame, it is certainly a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon and quite an honor. It's with pride and emotion, and to all the fans in New York and in Los Angeles, the reaction, the treatment has nothing but great. It's been something that I will never forget all of my life. But I think all of us in baseball have to remember one thing, and I've said this before. As great as this game is, as much fun as we have in this game, the thrills, if it was not for you, the fans, walking through turnstiles, turning on radios, turning on televisions, coming here to Cooperstown to witness these induction ceremonies, to just watch possibly a game that you love, baseball would not survive. So we all thank you. That is what we have to say to you here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Another premier pitcher of the 1960s was lefty Sandy Koufax of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Although his career was shortened by injury, Koufax left behind an impressive list of accomplishments. He won 3 Cy Young Awards, threw 4 no-hitters, and also pitched a perfect game. At first, Koufax was unable to control his blistering fastball and toiled in mediocrity. In 1961, he turned the corner and won 18 games. And in 1963, he reached star status by winning 25 games and leading the league with 306 strikeouts. After winning the pennant in 1963, the Dodgers and Koufax faced the New York Yankees in the World Series. Game 1 took place in New York, and before a hometown crowd, the kid from Brooklyn put on one of the most spectacular pitching performances in World Series history. With an overpowering fastball and a nasty curve, Koufax dazzled the fans and baffled the Yankee batters. On this day, the left-hander was nearly unhittable. Koufax allowed only 2 runs in the 5-2 victory. Sandy also set a new World Series record by striking out 15 Yankee batters. The Dodgers went on to win the next 2 games of the series and sent out Koufax to finish the Yankees in the 4th game. Once again, Koufax was dominant as he struck out 8 and limited New York to 1 run. Behind his brilliant pitching, the Dodgers won the game and the series in 4 games. Following a 19-win season in 1964, Koufax put together a dream season in 1965. That year, he won 26 games and set a major league record with 382 strikeouts in a season. The Dodgers entered the World Series and faced the Minnesota Twins. Koufax won 2 out of the 3 games, including the deciding 7th game. Although he would win 27 games in 1966, the 31-year-old Koufax was forced to retire due to an arthritic condition in his pitching arm. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Bob Gibson fashioned a reputation for being a hard and fast pitcher. The lean right-hander went after batters with an aggressive, if not mean, attitude. which no doubt helped him to win 20 or more games 6 times in his career. Along with all of his physical tools, Gibson also possessed the savvy heart of a champion. In the 1964 season, Gibson won 19 games while his team, the St. Louis Cardinals, overcame an 11-game deficit to capture the pennant. The Cardinals then took on the New York Yankees in the World Series. After taking a loss in Game 2, Bob Gibson came back with a vengeance against New York in Game 5. He struck out 12 Yankees in 10 innings to earn a 5-2 win. With the series all even, Gibson came back for Game 7. He mastered New York once again with 9 strikeouts and clinched the Cardinals' World Series victory with a 7-5 win. In 1965, Bob Gibson won 20 games for the first time. He repeated that feat the following year. Then in 1967, he and the Cardinals returned to the World Series and faced the Boston Red Sox. The series served as a setting for a virtuoso performance by Bob Gibson. In the first game, he went the distance, struck out 10, and earned a 2-1 win. Then in Game 4, he allowed only 4 hits in a 6-0 win. In the 7th and deciding game, he struck out 10 while pitching his 3rd complete game win to give St. Louis another World Series victory. In 1968, Gibson was awesome. He won 22 games through 13 shutouts and had an earned run average of 1.12. He was named the National League's MVP, but his finest hour came in the 1968 World Series against the Detroit Tigers. In Game 1 of the series, Gibson orchestrated the most memorable series performance of his career. He first tied a series record by striking out 15 Tigers. Gibson, however, was not yet finished, and he geared up to surpass the record held by Sandy Koufax.
2 strikes to Norm Cash. Gibson looking for a new series record. Struck him out! A brand new World Series record. Bob Gibson has every fan at Busch Stadium on their feet. What an unbelievable day for Gibson. Willie Horton at the plate. Horton with a couple of strikes. Gibson trying to put down the side. Called strike 3.
Despite Gibson's heroics, the Cardinals lost the series in 7 games. In 1969, Gibson once again won 20 games for St. Louis. The following year, he earned his 2nd Cy Young Award. Then in 1971, Gibson approached a milestone that is, without a doubt, the most treasured of all for pitchers. In the game against the Pittsburgh Pirates, Gibson was working on the first no-hitter of his career.
Drysdale standing between Gibson and the no-hitter. A pitch, swing and a miss. He's done it. A no-hit, no-run game by Bob.
In 1974, he added yet another enviable accomplishment to his illustrious list by reaching the lofty figure of 3,000 strikeouts.
Geronimo, the stretch, and the pitch. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Number 3,000 for Bob Gibson. Another milestone.
Bob Gibson would go on to pitch for the Cardinals until 1975. Gibson won 251 games and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. Juan Marichal of the San Francisco Giants possessed a fluid, high-kick delivery as well as an assortment of effective pitches. During his 15-year career, the Dominican dandy won 20 or more games in a season 6 times and was one of the most consistent pitchers in the game. Marichal's first appearance in the major leagues was in 1960, and it was nothing less than spectacular. He threw a no-hitter for 7 innings and finished the game with a 1-hit shutout. In 1963, Marichal blossomed into a star. That season, he won 25 games, and in one game against the Milwaukee Braves, he pitched 16 innings, struck out 14, and earned a 1-0 victory. Another highlight of that season took place on June 15th. Marichal threw the first no-hitter of his career against the Houston Colt 45s. Marichal and Sandy Koufax were considered the 2 best pitchers in the National League. In 1964, Marichal continued his dominance by winning 21 games. Then in 1965, he was involved in an ugly altercation with the rival Los Angeles Dodgers. While at the plate, Marichal struck Dodger catcher Johnny Roseboro with his bat and touched off a bench-clearing brawl. Marichal claimed that Roseboro had nicked his ear with a return throw to the mound. This incident marked Juan as a villain throughout his career. Following the fight, Marichal went on to win 22 games and reached the 20-win plateau for the 3rd straight year. In 1966, Marichal began the season by winning 10 games in a row. He stretched that streak to 15, and talk of a 30-win season began circulating. Marichal sustained an injury to one of his pitching fingers and finished the season with a 25-6 record. He was recognized as the best right-hander in baseball. Over the remainder of his career, Marichal was the ace of the Giants staff as he won over 20 games in 1968 and 69. Upon his retirement from baseball in 1975, Juan Marichal had won a total of 243 games. In 1983, he was honored with an induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Jim Palmer of the Baltimore Orioles once said that he had a perfect career. And although some might call it bragging, the man certainly could back up his words. Palmer won 3 Cy Young Awards, playing on 3 World Championship teams, appearing in 6 All-Star games, and also threw a no-hitter. Like they say, it's not bragging when you can back it up. In the 1966 World Series, the 20-year-old Palmer stole the spotlight from Dodger ace Sandy Koufax. In Game 2, Palmer beat Koufax with a 4-hit shutout to become the youngest winning pitcher in World Series history. The Orioles went on to sweep the Dodgers in 4 straight games to become the world champions. An arm injury kept Palmer out of action for much of 1967 and all of 1968. Upon his return in 1969, Palmer displayed his old form from the beginning and won 11 straight games. On August 14, 1969, Palmer delivered a masterpiece with a no-hit game against the Oakland A's. Palmer went on to win 16 games that year, while the Orioles succumbed to the Mets in the World Series. In 1970, Palmer reached the 20-win mark for the first time and played in his first All-Star game. The Orioles cruised into the World Series to face the Big Red Machine of Cincinnati. With fabulous fielding help from Brooks Robinson, Palmer beat the Reds in Game 1, and the Orioles went on to a second World Series win with a 5-game domination of the Reds. Palmer went on to win 20 games in 1971 and 72. In 1973, he won 22 games and received the first Cy Young Award of his career. Although the Orioles would not return to the World Series until 1979, Jim Palmer distinguished himself with spectacular performances and individual success. In the decade of the 70s, he won more games than any pitcher in baseball. Palmer was a complete pitcher who displayed both physical and mental skills that were nearly flawless. He won his second Cy Young Award in 1975 after winning 23 games. In 1976, he won 22 and was awarded the third Cy Young Award of his career. By winning 20 or more games in 1977 and 1978, Jim Palmer joined Hall of Famers Walter Johnson and Lefty Grove as the only American League pitchers to win 20 or more games 8 times. Jim Palmer's final moment of glory in baseball came about in the 1983 World Series. In Game 3 against Philadelphia, Palmer made a relief appearance and pitched 2 shutout innings and was awarded his first World Series win since 1971. The Orioles won the World Series in 5 games. Jim Palmer officially ended his career in baseball in 1984. Palmer won a total of 268 games, and in 17 years he suffered only 2 losing seasons. He left behind a legacy that consisted of class, quality, and excellence, and will no doubt find a place in baseball's Hall of Fame. Nolan Ryan, baseball's all-time strikeout king. While pitching for the California Angels of the American League during the 70s, Ryan became known as the hardest throwing pitcher in the game. His awesome fastball consistently reached the upper 90s and often overwhelmed even the most skilled batters. He led the American League in strikeouts 7 times and was without a doubt the most feared pitcher in either league. While he attained lasting notoriety with the Angels, some might not remember that Ryan had actually begun his career with the New York Mets. In fact, he made a relief appearance in Game 3 of the 1969 World Series and stifled a Baltimore Oriole threat. The Mets went on to win the series, but a young Nolan Ryan was traded 2 years later to California. Control problems had plagued Ryan throughout his early years, but by 1973, the flame-throwing Ryan began to solve the problem. Early in the season, Ryan faced the Kansas City Royals. Before long, it became obvious to everyone that Ryan was pitching the game of his life. In all, Ryan struck out 12 Royal batters, and through 9 marvelous innings, he hadn't given up a hit. When it was all over, Nolan Ryan had his first no-hitter. He would go on to throw a second no-hitter that season, and in the final game of the year, he went after another record. Sandy Koufax held the Major League record for most strikeouts in a season with 382. Ryan needed 16 strikeouts to break the record. Although he had to go 11 innings, Nolan Ryan got his 383rd strikeout of the season against the final batter in a 5-4 victory. In one season, Ryan had thrown 2 no-hitters, broken a Major League strikeout record, and won 20 games. In 1974, Ryan unfurled the 3rd no-hitter of his career against the Minnesota Twins. Then in 1975, Ryan was at it again. He faced the Baltimore Orioles and incredibly pitched a 4th no-hitter and joined the company of Sandy Koufax. Ryan was traded to the Houston Astros in 1979 and treated National League batters to his specialty, high, hard heat. On September 26, 1981, Ryan had the fans of Houston on their feet as he methodically plowed through the Los Angeles Dodgers. It became more and more evident that the 34-year-old power pitcher was going after a 5th career no-hitter, a mark never before achieved in baseball history. Ryan became the only man ever to pitch 5 no-hitters. With 5 no-hitters under his belt, Nolan Ryan has set sights on Walter Johnson's all-time strikeout record, 3,508. He entered the 1983 season needing 15 to break the record. He broke the record and has gone on to add over 1,000 more to his astounding career total. There's no telling where the Ryan Express will ultimately come to a halt.